Well, I grew up in England, and I had a lot of horrible experiences in my early 20s. I was mugged 3 times. It's bad enough being mugged once, but 3 times was pretty severe. I had my skull fractured, my neck broken, 3 herniated discs on each of those occasions. And it was the early 1980s, so PTSD wasn't really recognized as a thing at the time. I was in Manchester, that's where I went to university. And basically, the treatment I got was a cup of tea, walk it off, suck it up. That's how I was taught to deal with it. And consequently, I spent probably 3 years absolutely miserable. Wasn't sleeping properly, wasn't eating properly. My period stopped. I was in a pretty bad physical way. And my mental state was getting worse and worse. And then I realized that maybe, I should get help. I went to the psychiatrist at the hospital. That didn't help at all. And then it happened again. I was mugged this time by 3 men who came out of the dark, slammed me on the ground, beat the living daylights out of me. I thought I was going to die. And so things got even worse. And then I decided Manchester was clearly the problem, so I should move to London. And I went down to London to start a career in the entertainment business. And I was mugged again, coming home from the theater one night. A young kid threw a bicycle at my head and fractured my two like vertebrae in my neck. And I luckily not my spinal cord, but it was pretty severe. And that time I went down pretty fast because, the third time I was terrified to leave the house after that. But to cut a long story short, I finally asked for help and recovered, and I went on to win an Academy Award in the film business. I started in the theater, then TV, movies, and ended up living in California for 16 years and working on really big Hollywood movies and flying around the world. So it was amazing because I went from not being able to get out of my bedroom, terrified to leave the
Mhm.
house, to, flying around the world working with the most famous people in Hollywood. So I think really what I like sharing with people is that we're never broken. That everybody has innate well-being, everybody has innate resilience, and it was just a question of finding that and looking in the right direction. So that's what I like to talk about.
Oh wow, what a story. It's incredible to really start this powerfully to seeing the amount of, trauma and adversity you've had to overcome and being here smiling and happy and accomplished and really shining the light that even though we might talk about some difficult topics in this conversation, there is already the message of we can overcome anything and everything. We have the capacity. But let's talk a little bit practically in terms of if someone has trauma, it could be as severe as yours, it could be any kind of a loss and grief. We struggle with depression, there's lots of things happening in our lives, professionally, health-wise, family, career, that could leave us feeling of loss and desperation and negativity and feeling like we cannot leave the house, we cannot make a change, we cannot really do anything. We feel powerless. We feel like the world is against us. We feel afraid of, what could happen. So from your experience, what then were the first steps? Yes, you reached out and you seek professional help. Within that, what were the things that helped you start making the steps to recovery? Were there any specific advice, specific modalities, practices? What was the thing that started you to see the light and helped you then, get on the path of recovery?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say actually not professional help, because my family doctor sent me to the psychiatrist at the local hospital, and it was awful because it would take me 2 panic attacks just to get there. And then she would say to me, like, what happened? So the first time I tell her what happened, and then she's like, tell me again. I'm like, you deaf? Didn't you hear the first? Like, so I tell her again, and then she'd want me to tell her again. And I think I only went to 2 appointments because I couldn't, I needed her to help me not relive it and relive it because that's what I was doing at home. And that's all she seemed she had to offer was to, like, I think they call it flooding therapy, where you keep like retelling the story as if you're going to then get bored of it. Well, I had been screaming it in my head for a couple of years, and that doesn't work. It didn't work for me anyway. So I then kind of went back into my shell and suffered for, a little while longer until when I was in London, I reached out to like a women's crisis center, and I remember I had a mentor there, and she asked me, was I willing to let go of my story? And I was like, what? I was so offended, like, because what I heard her say and what she actually said were two different things. What I heard her say was, it didn't happen, it didn't hurt, and get over it. Right? And in my head, I was screaming, it did happen, it still hurts, and I can't get over it. But thank God there was like this moment of clarity where I knew there was a grain of truth in what she was saying. And because I'd become the girl who was mugged 3 times, like it had become part of my identity. And a lot of the people I talk to with gone through traumas, and like you said, trauma is a very subjective thing. It doesn't have to be like massive violence like what I experienced. But um, I I was feeling my thinking. That's what I see now, as I spent probably a good 10 years, what probably would now be called PTSD, 10 years up in my head, reliving, and because the events themselves, as terrifying as they were over in like seconds or a minute and a half at most. But the 10 years I suffered was happening in my head. And so that question kind of set me on the path of starting to learn and understand how the mind works, how thought is creating our experience from moment to moment. And we're actually having what I've learned to call an inside out experience, meaning I'm actually experiencing my thinking, not the circumstances. So fast forward, a couple of decades, and about 10 years ago, I came across a new understanding, a new paradigm in psychology, and I started learning that this idea that we're always feeling our thinking. And like I said at the beginning, we all have this innate well-being. So I can forget that. We can all get caught up in our thoughts. And when I do, I'm now suffering the memories or even the catastrophizing about the future. And if I come back to the moment, I'm actually safe. Here right now, I'm okay. And that's what I share with people. That's what set me free. And it's so I don't go back into the past anymore. It's not that I can't, it's not that I'm afraid to. I just don't need to, because I've got what I need here and now.
It's such a powerful reframing. It's not taking away what have happened to you. It's not, really putting it aside and saying, you were not a victim of something horrible did not. We are not trying to hide that, but it's moving on from there. Again, the moving on is often difficult for people. PTSD is a very severe condition for lots of people, not only for people who have been in things like wars or any kind of an assault. PTSD can be really big part of our daily lives. Of we are, as you said, catastrophizing. We're living in our minds. We're often living either in the past and worrying about what have happened in the past and reliving, or living in the future in our minds of like, what if this happens. And I think the powerful message that you shared and lots of the insights that we get from our guests, it's the here and now, in the present, right now, right here. And that's where practices like mindfulness, could be embodied practices, could be physical activities, can really help us to bring our attention into the daily, into the reality right here. Is there something that, again, another practice or a technique that helped you then when you were starting noticing, okay, I have this realization, I know that present moment, right here, right now, I am safe. But again, our brains are powerful machines that do have a tendency to pull us into the direction of past or future. Were you practicing something? Were you using any techniques, any modalities, any tools that would help you find a balance again, find present moment again, to bring you back into this neutral, safe zone right here, right now?
The short answer is no. Because I, for many years, I trained as a trauma counselor and a certified life coach, and I had all these tools and techniques. And I find that tools and techniques are temporary. They work temporarily. And you have to keep doing. Like, I did tons of expressive writing. I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot, as Pilates, yoga, you name it. I tried it. Course in Miracles, the Enneagram, I tried everything. And another part of my story is that I had chronic pain for 25 years. My back would I used to call it going out. My back would go out. I used to describe myself as being like Audrey Hepburn on one side and Marilyn Monroe on the other side. I'd be so twisted and contorted. I'd have sciatica pain shooting down my legs. I was paralyzed several times and rushed to the hospital. And I see now that that pain, also IBS, asthma, allergies, you name it, I'd had it at some point. I see now that my body was screaming at me to slow down. Now, I kept trying to treat all those medical things because I saw them as, medical problems, hay fever, allergies, IBS, you need to go to all these different specialists. So I'm doing, meditation for my mind and chiropractic for my back, and it was exhausting. And it was actually when I stopped doing all those tools and techniques that the pain went away. I've been almost pain-free for 10 years now. And I started understanding what anxiety really is. Anxiety, at least for me, was I started to see that it was when I'm up in my head worrying, like you said, catastrophizing, going back to the past, whatever it is, all of the above, that any kind of tool and technique I was using to do that was actually continuing to rev up my nervous system, because it was like saying, there is something wrong, let's fix it, right? And so what I've noticed, especially about people with chronic pain, is we're often perfectionists. I don't know if anybody listening can hear them nodding right now, right? And what I realized about perfectionism, it's not so much about, getting everything in a row, like having your books, like color coordinated or something. That's kind of an OCD thing, which is a similar problem. But perfectionism, I found, is when you're seeing that something is wrong. We're supervising, monitoring, like I could, like, I had this funny example a couple of years ago. I was walking through a parking lot. You know how they often paint white lines to show you where to park your car? And you know how sometimes there's always that idiot who parks like a little bit too close to the white line or across, and you're like, and I think I was in IKEA or somewhere like that, and I was walking through and I saw someone who'd parked like that, and I remember thinking, it's so selfish. Why can't they just take a minute to just line up properly? And I started laughing because I don't even have a car right now. I live in the center of a city where there's nowhere to park. It's got nothing to do with me. And yet that's how my mind worked. And I think one of the symptoms of PTSD is hypervigilance. Like I was very hypervigilant about footsteps behind me, for example. I could be on this beach in California, beautiful sunshine with my friends, and somebody just jogs past me. My nervous system would jump. I mean, thank God that's been gone for a long time now, but that lasted for quite, like, say, 10, 15 years after the muggings. So I think with all the tools and techniques I was using, all those different modalities, it's almost like the hypervigilance stopped out here, but it kind of went in here, and I got very vigilant about my thinking. I was excellent at thought hygiene, right? Can't have that negative thought, can't have that, like, write that one away, meditate that one away. And all of that was an innocent, I'm going to stress the word innocent, it was an innocent misunderstanding of how the mind works. What if thought is actually neutral and you don't have to do anything? Why? Because thought is a spiritual energy and it's always moving. It's constantly moving through our minds. So I like to talk in analogies with my clients. So I say, what if thought is like trains going in and out of a station? My head is like Grand Central Station. So this thought has gone through, the train has left the station. So any kind of reframing tool technique is like dragging the train back into the station to work out how to make it leave. Well, it already left, right? So once I started understanding that thought is an energy and it's always moving, there was actually nothing to do. And I think that's why my pain went away. That's why my anxiety went away. And like you said, I can talk about the past. I can talk about it in graphic detail now. Can't upset me now because I'm in a better mood, a better perspective. It's not denial. I just see it differently now. Now, if I were in a low mood right now telling you about it, I'd be crying, you're crying, it's a disaster, right? But from a better perspective, when I see how it actually works, I'm not frightened to talk about it because it's not happening now.